something explosive has just happened behind the polished image of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and this time it did not come from a tabloid rumor, a palace whisper, or an anonymous internet theory. It came from reporting that landed like a thunderbolt, exposing what many suspected but few could prove. And now, the carefully protected story that Harry and Meghan built over years appears to be facing its most dangerous challenge yet. Because when reports begin describing a prince as deeply unhappy, isolated, and trapped inside the very life he once fought to create, people stop asking whether there is smoke. They start looking for the fire.
Diana's inheritance gone. The polo drama not going to be made. A couple, quote, wildly unhappy with goals that have diverged in a way that may be, quote, impossible to reconcile.
For years, Harry and Meghan presented themselves as the ultimate love story. Two people against the world. Two people who sacrificed everything for freedom, privacy, and happiness. That narrative became the foundation of an entire empire. It sold interviews. It sold documentaries. It sold books. It sold speeches. It sold a vision. But what happens when cracks begin appearing in the foundation itself? What happens when sources close enough to know the truth start painting a very different picture? That is where this story becomes impossible to ignore, because the real shock is not simply that Harry may be unhappy. The shock is that discussions surrounding the future of his marriage appear to have moved beyond private speculation and into serious conversations among people close to the situation. And buried inside the reporting was one detail so extraordinary that it instantly changed the entire conversation. The suggestion that if Harry were ever to remarry, royal permission would become part of the equation. Think about that for a moment. Why would anyone even mention remarriage unless the possibility had somehow entered discussions behind closed doors? Why bring such a detail into a serious report unless sources were signaling something much bigger than temporary marital strain? It is the kind of detail that makes observers stop scrolling and start paying attention. Because details matter. Tiny details often reveal the biggest secrets, and suddenly the picture becomes much darker. Harry left Britain believing he was escaping constraints. He left believing he was moving toward freedom. Yet according to growing speculation and sourced observations, the reality may look very different from the dream that was sold to the public. Instead of finding peace, some reports suggest he found isolation. Instead of reconnecting with himself, he may have drifted further away from everything that once defined him.
The other reason the divorce talk came up is the recent Wall Street Journal article. And the very last line of the Wall Street Journal article was, if Harry ever wants to get remarried again, he's going to have to ask William for permission. Now, the Wall Street Journal is not the type of publication to just throw that in. To me, it smacked, they had several people saying how unhappy the couple are, how unhappy Harry is.
The significance of this cannot be overstated. Harry remains a prince. He remains part of the royal structure whether he likes it or not. He may live thousands of miles away, but the constitutional machinery surrounding the monarchy never truly disappears. It follows him. It shadows him. It remains attached to his identity. And when conversations begin drifting towards subjects like remarriage, observers naturally start asking uncomfortable questions. Why are such topics emerging now? Why are insiders suddenly willing to speak? Why does it feel as though the protective shield around the Sussex narrative is becoming weaker? Those questions grow louder when viewed against everything that has happened during the past several years. The interviews, the accusations, the memoir, the documentaries, the public battles, the family fractures. Every chapter was supposed to strengthen brand Sussex. Instead, some critics argue that every chapter slowly revealed deeper contradictions. Because while Harry appeared to be searching for personal healing, Meghan appeared focused on building influence, visibility, and commercial momentum. Whether fair or unfair, that perception has become increasingly difficult to separate from the public conversation surrounding them. And now comes perhaps the most uncomfortable revelation of all. Reports suggesting that the couple may not simply be facing ordinary marital difficulties. Reports suggesting they may be struggling with something far more dangerous, fundamentally different visions for the future. That changes everything. A disagreement can be solved, a difficult year can be survived, stress can be managed. But what happens when two people want entirely different lives? What happens when one person longs for family roots, familiarity, and a quieter existence, while the other remains committed to expansion, opportunity, and relentless public relevance? That is not a scheduling conflict. That is not a misunderstanding. That is a collision of destinations.
My understanding is that there are members of the family who are very aware of the fact that the marriage is problematic.
The timing could hardly be worse, because while these discussions explode into public view, questions are also growing about the future of the Sussex commercial machine. The image of unity was never just emotional, it was financial. The partnership itself became the product. People were not simply buying books, documentaries, or interviews, they were buying the story behind them, the story of a couple who chose each other above everything else. But if audiences begin questioning that story, the consequences become enormous. Suddenly, every project faces scrutiny. Every appearance carries new meaning. Every photograph invites speculation. Every smile is analyzed. Every public moment becomes evidence. And perhaps no one understands this better than Meghan herself.
The couple's goals have quietly diverged. Harry wants privacy and reconciliation. Meghan wants scale, visibility, and reinvention. She would never allow the quieter life Harry craves.
For years, she has demonstrated remarkable discipline in managing narratives, navigating criticism, and maintaining focus under extraordinary pressure. Supporters see resilience. Critics see calculation. Either way, few dispute her ability to think strategically, which is why the current situation presents such a unique challenge. This is not a controversy that can be neutralized with a carefully chosen interview. This is not a negative headline that disappears after 48 hours. This is something deeper, because once credible reports begin describing structural problems inside a marriage, the public starts viewing everything through a different lens. Every future appearance carries an invisible question mark. Every future statement is filtered through doubt, and doubt is dangerous, especially when your entire public identity depends upon certainty. The most fascinating part of this story may be that neither Harry nor Meghan appears positioned to fully control what happens next. Events seem to be moving under their own momentum now. Conversations once whispered privately are becoming public. Assumptions once dismissed as speculation are becoming mainstream discussion. And somewhere inside that massive California mansion, two people may be confronting realities they can no longer easily escape. Because once a narrative begins unraveling, stopping it becomes far harder than creating it. The situation becomes even more explosive when you look at what may have been Meghan's ultimate contingency plan. Because for years, rumors circulated about diaries, notes, records, memories, and carefully preserved details from behind palace walls and behind the gates of Montecito. Whether every claim is true or not almost becomes irrelevant. The perception alone created a powerful image. Meghan as someone preparing for every possible outcome while documenting every chapter of the journey. But now there appears to be a problem. The very timing of Harry's reported unhappiness may have complicated everything. Think about the position this creates. If the public increasingly believes the marriage is struggling, every future move becomes more complicated. Every book, every interview, every project is suddenly viewed through the lens of a possible separation. The story can no longer be sold exactly the same way, because audiences now know there may be another story unfolding beneath the surface. And once people suspect there is a hidden chapter, they become obsessed with finding it. That obsession only grows stronger when money enters the conversation, because behind every royal headline sits another reality. Finances, massive properties, security teams, staff, public relations operations, lawyers, advisors, travel, lifestyle. Maintaining a global brand requires enormous resources. And suddenly, reports began suggesting that some of the major financial engines that once powered the Sussex machine were no longer producing the momentum they once did. That is where the pressure starts becoming impossible to ignore. Because emotional strain is one thing, financial strain is another. Combined together, they become something far more dangerous. And then came perhaps the most unsettling discussion of all. The idea that Harry may feel trapped not simply emotionally, but structurally. Trapped by geography, trapped by legal realities, trapped by decisions that cannot easily be reversed. For years, people imagined Harry could simply return to Britain whenever he wished. But life is rarely that simple. Children create roots. Legal systems create restrictions. Time creates consequences. The choices made years ago begin shaping the options available today. And suddenly, a painful possibility emerges. What if the life Harry misses is the very life he can no longer realistically return to? That question hangs over everything. It hangs over every report of loneliness. It hangs over every story of distance from family. It hangs over every account suggesting he spends more time with employees and security personnel than lifelong friends. Because this is what makes the entire story feel so dramatic. The image of a prince who left everything to find happiness, only to discover that happiness may be farther away than ever. The image image of a man looking across an ocean at a family he no longer fully belongs to and a future he may no longer fully control. Meanwhile, Meghan faces her own battle. Her challenge is not isolation. Her challenge is credibility. The narrative she spent years building is facing its toughest stress test. Every new report creates another obstacle. Every new revelation creates another question. Every new source adds another crack to the image. And yet neither side appears ready to surrender. That is why this story feels unfinished. Nothing has officially ended. No announcements have been made. No final decisions have been revealed. But something has undeniably changed. The public conversation has crossed a line. What once lived in speculation now lives in mainstream discussion. What once sounded like rumor now sounds like a possibility serious enough for respected reporting to examine. And that changes the atmosphere completely. Because now Harry knows the world sees what insiders allegedly see. Now Meghan knows the world is questioning what was once accepted. Now every appearance, every project, every statement will be interpreted differently. The confession, whether intentional or not, has escaped into the public record. It cannot be recalled. It cannot be hidden. It cannot be erased. And perhaps that is why this moment feels so significant. Not because it guarantees divorce, not because it predicts reconciliation, not because it tells us exactly what comes next, but because it confirms that something beneath the surface is moving, something that has been building quietly for years, something that may eventually force decisions neither Harry nor Meghan expected to face this soon. And somewhere behind the gates of that California estate, beyond the cameras, beyond the headlines, beyond the carefully managed public appearances, two people may be confronting a reality that has finally become impossible to ignore. The story is no longer about what happened 6 years ago. The story is about what happens next. And judging by everything now emerging into public view, that next chapter may be the most explosive chapter of all.